Have you felt disconnected lately? Just feel the fatigue of virtual church? Welcome to Lobby Talk with me, your host, Jonathan Tay, and joined by Pastor Jason Locke for a 6-episode series as we try to inject some of that organic chit-chat back into the life of Hope Bible Church and dive into what doing life together looks and feels like in an increasingly remote and digital environment. Hey everyone, we're more than halfway now, and so episode 4 is here today. I'm here with Jason as per usual. Now, episode 6 coincidentally will actually fall on a sermon that is not part of this series. So what we thought would be a really good idea is for you guys to submit questions to us. We thought, how could we get questions from the audience to Jason or myself? And we thought that the best way will be to email Jason at jasonl@hopemarkham.ca. Did I get that right?
That's right. Yep.
Okay. So jasonl@hopemarkham.ca. Please leave a subject line as lobby talk so that Jason knows not to sift or delete something by accident. So that's what we're headed up to in week 6. So that's 2 weeks from now. So any questions you've had up till now through this sermon series or through lobby talk, let us know, and please submit any type of questions you may have. It doesn't necessarily have to be a sermon related. It would be awesome if it was, but if you had any also personal questions, we'll obviously kind of filter through what we think will be helpful for the show and for the other audience members. But for the most part, submit away, and we'll see where we get to with that. So, Jason, how are you today?
Well, today, yes. By God's grace, I'm wearing a hat because I need a haircut. My wife reminded me.
Has she tried to cut your hair for you?
She did. It was very stressful. I never sweated before while I got my hair cut. But literally, I could feel sweaty. But she did a good job. She did a great job for the first time. We got like a Conair was the brand thing, picked it up from Walmart to shave and trim, or not like the whatever you do when you cut your hair. And funny, I actually saw my barber on the street when I was going for a run up Main Street Markham, and I was passing by my barber shop, and I was like, oh man, I'd really like to go there. And then as I was passing by the barber shop, I saw my barber roller skating the other way, and he definitely didn't recognize me. But I'll be looking forward to the day. Did you feel like
guilty at all?
No. But what I saw was like, his hair looks nice. Who cuts his hair? Does he cut his own hair? Who gets a barber to cut a barber's hair? I don't know.
That's true.
But
would she want to do it again, and would you let her do it again?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Cool.
Definitely would let her do it again, and I would definitely want her to do it again. But I'll be happy to free my wife from the obligation of doing it when the opportunity...
How long did it take? You don't mind me asking.
Oh, it was like more than half an hour, not an hour. I can't remember exactly.
It's pretty reasonable. Yeah.
I guess so.
For a first time, it's pretty reasonable. Nice.
She did a good job. Yeah, she was a little trepidatious and needed to tell her, like, get it right up in there. And she was really nervous, but she did good. Slow and steady. That's my wife. Mm-hmm.
Nice. Speaking of things that you could potentially let go too long, what's one aspect of life that you're, in this kind of season that you've had, you're just like, man, I let myself go in that way, or this aspect of my life? Because realistically, you're working in a new environment, there's new things that require your attention, so something, maybe you've held it together pretty well, but if there's something that you could say, wow, I let go pretty hard in that aspect of my life, what would it be?
Last week we talked about like things that I'd want to still do. This is a very different one. I think I let myself go. I've been going to bed later than I've wanted to, and I've given myself some space that has been less helpful for me than I thought it would, by taking time to just like linger later watching an episode of something at night before I go to bed, thinking it would help me relax more, but it hasn't really. It's just made me ache more in my worrying, I guess. Some things are entertaining and I enjoyed, but it's helpful for me to, as I read from one author in this book, I can't remember what it was called, Rules for Life, I think it was called. It was about like spiritual disciplines based on old monk habits. But essentially he said, you need to learn to curate your entertainment. And
Nice.
he said and someone might have gotten to this link because they scrolled through through social media. But the reality is that Facebook doesn't love you. Instagram doesn't love you. YouTube doesn't love you. And I know that's weird to say. It's like, of course, obviously they don't love you. Yeah, but they're making your attention into a commodity.
Yeah.
They don't, and they were doing everything they can, as much as they can, to keep your attention so that they can sell you ads. And it's a business. And it's not bad, it's not wrong. But this guy said if the system of social media is organized in a way that will never in itself, if you lead to self-control, it will always lead to more self-indulgence. And he said there's a lot of great things with entertainment, but you need to learn to curate your media intake. And over the past couple weeks, I haven't. I've been just like allowing myself that I've given myself to the algorithm.
Nice. What's the algorithm been pushing on you, and what have you said? Wow, Netflix, you really know me.
I don't. I'd spend most of my time on that like lingering time on YouTube. YouTube's been pushing some weird stuff. YouTube's been pushing some like conspiracy theory things to me that I'm like,
Classic.
But also, I watched The Last Dance.
Yeah, okay.
On Netflix. Loved it. So it's been pushing me a ton of like Michael Jordan highlights. Like OG Michael Jordan highlights and stuff like that.
For sure.
So, but then I'm getting like crazy, just like, wait, did I search stuff on YouTube, or did YouTube's cookies somehow search that I was on Netflix watching this, and now who's tracing me? Who's watching me? But so that's what YouTube's been pushing a lot on me.
Nice. For me, it's been pit bull videos, like redeeming pit bulls and adopting them.
You mean not like the hip hop artist Pitbull?
No, like actual dogs from shelters. And stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then
redeeming pit bulls.
Yeah, and then DIY cabins in the wood.
Wow. Okay, that's very unique.
I know they're like not on the same side of the spectrum, but that's kind of been that's what the algorithm has been teaching me about myself. All right, so I got a question for you, man. It's not specifically to the sermon, but it's about your sermon process.
Okay, great.
You mentioned how you were going through this sermon and you were like, wow, this is a passage about suffering. It's not going to be particularly easy to preach on. Mm-hmm. Is that like up there in terms of top 3 topics that when you go verse by verse, you're like, oh, I was hoping this topic would come out a little later, or we're hitting this topic now, are we? Is there a list of topics that you're like, I do not want to tackle this right now, or this is the hardest topic for me to tackle on?
I've learned I've learned that the more I've grown up and the more I've been able to do a walk with Jesus myself and walk with Jesus along with others, I've recognized that when you're in Bible college, you kind of like get all the tools to read the Bible, but you rarely get the tools to read people. And a lot of the times younger men in ministry and in pastoral work, and I'm reading a book about this right now, where there was this book written called Resilient Ministry. It's like helping pastors thrive in their job, and the book is based on this summit that they had with like 100 pastors, and they came and they did a survey amongst the pastors, and one of the things they said was like, we were trained to read the Bible, we were not trained to read people. And often younger men, especially in who get the theological training, are so sensitive to be right and be true, that they're insensitive to the people that they're speaking to, and they'll come to any topic like suffering, and they're just like, well, I just need to say the right thing, and they have no spilt milk in their lives. Like they don't know the pain of they don't know a lot of the pain and baggage of suffering. So I've learned that you can make theology into like an ivory tower, like high academic thing, but it's on the ground, real life stuff that everyone's dealing with. So I'd say for sure suffering is definitely near the top of things that are hard to approach in Scripture. I have another thing I'd say is I have convictions about what's called eschatology, end times related things, but I really don't like. If there's a top 3, that'd be one of them. That'd be like, oh man, this would be a hard one, no, because popular Christian media has made end times into fictional stories, right? Yeah. That are not necessarily biblically, theologically accurate, and also it's some people can make it so political too. So and people argue so finitely on the details of eschatology. I remember hearing one pastor say one time, I've stopped, I quit the planning committee and joined the welcoming committee, right? Nice. About Jesus coming back, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes people can be a little more feisty when it comes to eschatology. And like the book of Revelation was written for our endurance, for our encouragement, not for you to know what date and to know what political leader, political region, or political ideology is the enemy, and that's often what people make it into. It's a tribal us versus them thing rather than hope for endurance because Jesus is coming back. It's going to be hard. So yeah, that'd be another one that's kind of an interesting one to approach. Mm-hmm.
Cool. I'm going to touch back on something you just mentioned, which is coincidentally a great way to segue into our next question, which is directly related with the sermon now. So I'm going to read off a little bit of what I wrote because the setup's a little longer, so I want to make sure I get it right. Okay?
Let's go.
So you mentioned sometimes that we read these types of passages on suffering, and hypothetically, you said, well, you don't know what I've gone through, and where Paul is almost saying, yes, you're right, but I know what I've gone through. And I love that because that was so, like you said, suffering is, yes, you could make it a very ology, all up in your head thing, but for a lot of people in the church, this is a thing that they wrestle with every single day, and so
absolutely,
it can't just be head knowledge. Now, what I really like is that you said it in such a polite way, where you said Paul is almost saying, "Yes, you're right, but I know what I've gone through." In my head, when I thought you were going to say it was, Paul was going to say, "You don't know what I've gone through." It's like his resume of suffering is like crazy, right? So have you ever had someone come up to you as a pastor or leader, whether in your current role or as previously as a youth leader, with something that is so out of your depth that you found it difficult to speak the truth and love to that person, where you're like, wow, like that's...
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so week 1 of me on staff at our church.
Yeah.
Week 1, 2011. I sit down with a young adult male, a good man, who loves Jesus, haven't spoken with him in a couple years, but he just kind of tells me his whole story of how he came to Jesus. I am 19 years old, 20 years old, I'm 21 years old, I think. Yeah, 21 years old. Just started on staff at church. Just started living in Markham, where I grew up 20 minutes up the road in Stouffville. And Markham and Stouffville is expanding, and its demographics are changing. But once upon ago, it was very homogenous, right? And like I grew up in Stouffville, and we had we had what's it called, square dance competitions, where and it was like a very farm town, right? It's changed since then. But sit down with this guy, and he tells me essentially, I'm new to following Jesus. I used to be in the Markham Triads, and here's the scar where someone hit me with a machete on my skull. Oh, thank you. Okay. Um, like, yeah, I remember a time where uh, Pastor Ed, who used to work at our church, so grateful for the influence Pastor Ed Gregorczyk was in my life. I went down to, I can't remember, Sick Kids or Sunnybrook, and this young man, to visit a young man who was in the hospital and in such a bad car crash, and he had to have such invasive brain surgery that he actually was missing like it looked like if he was a video game that his character didn't render properly, like there was an actual space, like
Yeah.
a gaping space missing in his skull. And Pastor Ed was just so gracious and so kind and spoke to him like a real person. But I never saw someone like that before. I never seen that, and I was just crushed. And yeah, I think I can point to a lot of examples like that where you just see suffering so real and so raw. And so I'm learning often some of the best times in that is just to listen, to suffer together. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted.
Right.
Let's weep with those who weep. Let's mourn with those who mourn. So yeah, I've seen a lot of that. And when I was younger, I would have been like, well, here's the right theology. But that's not what pastoring is. That's not what Christian love is.
Yeah.
And it's weeping with those who weep. Yeah.
Now, say they do ask for some sort of speaking truth into their lives. Obviously, they're inviting it rather than you shoving it down their throat.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you need to have that level of personal experience of suffering as a prerequisite to speaking or ministering to someone, or do you feel like this is not going to sound exactly right the way I want it to, but do you feel like the Bible is enough on its own? Like you can just read scripture, and transfer it onto this person as a way of ministering to them, or do you feel like you have to relate to them in some way relationally?
It's always as an asset to be able to relate. It's always an asset to be able to relate in some context. I spoke with a pastor, a great guy named Kesefin from Scarborough, and he shared his story about his history in gang-related things, and he can relate to a guy who got macheted in the head more than I can, because I've never been in that environment. Right. So it's an asset, but all scripture is God-breathed and profitable for teaching, for correction, for rebuke, and for training in righteousness, that the man of God may be equipped for every good work. Scripture is enough for every good work, for sure, absolutely. So it's an asset to be able to empathize, but the good news is that Jesus is the high priest who has been tempted in everywhere as we are, yet without sin, so that we can come to him in any time of need, boldly, to his throne of grace, so that we can receive grace and mercy to help. So when James 5 says, if is anyone amongst you suffering, let him pray. That's what James 5 says. So often what you need is, you don't need some theologians can think about the way Jesus' ministry, the way Jesus served in three different ways. Jesus as prophet, Jesus as priest, Jesus as king. Jesus is each of these things. As king, he is ruler. He has authority. He acts justly and righteously. As prophet, he speaks the truth. He stands to the people on God's behalf. And the priest does the opposite. This priest stands to God on the people's behalf.
Yeah.
And in times of suffering, Jesus comes to us as a priest who knows what we feel, who's felt what we feel, and who comes to God with us to find God's grace and mercy and God's compassion. So that's what I would encourage anyone who's like, if you find someone, like one of the points was suffer together, right?
Yeah.
Yes, there's some truth. People may need to be here, but they don't. suffering is a time where we don't need. That's what was the problem with Job's friends in the story of Job. They were trying to be prophets. Here's what you're doing is wrong. They weren't doing the priestly, let me come together and let's go to God together. They just wanted to show him his wrong. And we need the empathetic sympathy.
Nice, because that's what I want to go with is the whole idea that, it's, I think you navigated that perfectly, where I wanted to really encourage our viewers that, the Bible is enough. Don't stone me. The Bible's enough. It's not what I was trying to get at. But definitely the relational thing is a huge asset. And don't be Job's friends. Be a good listener, be a good friend. Don't use the Bible almost as a weapon against your friends in those type of times. So thanks for that. Lament. You mentioned at the end that we need to practice lament. I've actually I had never really considered that as a kind of a concept, if that makes sense. I probably practiced lament in some form or aspect unofficially, but the way you said it was such a almost sounded like really structured. So what are some practical things that you personally do that would help me, someone who's not as practiced in lament, would say, hey, that's practicing lament right there?
They're great. I pulled out a little book here. It's called Psalms by Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Okay,
I keep it close to me frequently. I would say if you want to learn to practice to lament, read the laments of other people. Emotions can be a horse. Emotions can be like a stallion. It can be a wild stallion that's untamed, and you let it loose to buck and kick and destroy whatever it's in his path, or you can learn to not tame them, but harness them and ride them in a way that's controlled. So read laments of other people. This book, Psalms, kind of gives all the classifications of different types of the Psalms there are, and a huge portion of the Psalms are lament. It's like, watch David let his emotions go. They're just like, there's the horse just going wild in the field, but somehow, some way, the horse still comes back to the stable in the end.
I do notice that there's like this, and he always lands back somewhere.
Exactly. So I'll be honest, in a different type of lament, like online church has been hard. And I haven't let myself, I feel like sometimes I've just been allowing myself to just say fake it till you make it type thing. But this past week, I was just like, this is really hard, and I don't like it. And I grieved and lamented. And you know where I went? I went to Lamentations. And you know what the first line of Lamentations says? It's talking about after Jerusalem was destroyed by the Babylonian army. The first line of Lamentations is Jeremiah saying, how lonely sits the city that was once so filled with people.
Wow.
And that's what I was like, I preach to an empty room every week. It's so lonely. But I've been trying to bury that emotion. Lament embraces the emotion and expresses the emotion. But when we lament with the Psalms, it helps us to bring the stallion back home to the stable. So that it's hard to allow the grief to be expressed in a way that has hope that our God is still the same. He's still gracious and merciful and kind and loving. So read the Psalms. Practically, read the Psalms and lament with others.
Thanks, man. That's all I had for today. I think that's a great way to kind of leave our viewers off with something tangible that they can try today, right? So hopefully for those who are currently going in a season of whether small or large in terms of suffering, I think there's something for everyone in this episode. And again, if you're watching for the first time, there are 3 more episodes before this one that kind of culminate to today. And for those looking forward to 2 more, please remember to submit any questions you might have. I know that anytime I finish off our chats, I probably have one or two questions. I was like, oh, I should ask that or whatever. So if you have that out there, then feel free to submit those to Jason L at hopemarkham.ca.
That's right.
All right. Thanks, Jason.
Well, that's all for today on Lobby Talk. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast and remember to bring your questions and be ready to contribute to your small group meeting this week. And if you're not in one, please contact us at info@hopemarkham.ca, as we'd love to support you and for you to have community in times like these. Thanks for listening, and thank you to Pastor Jason for calling in this morning. Tune in next week as we catch up over morning coffee and chat about the weekend sermon in the church lobby. And we'll see you next time.